Finding slope from a graph. What is slope? Slope is the ratio of the change in y over the change in x. Given an xy coordinate grid, what do we call the vertical axis? We call the axis that measures up and down y. What do we call the horizontal axis? The axis that measures side to side we call x. Another way for referring to the slope. The change in y is sometimes referred to as the rise, and the change in x is sometimes referred to as the run. The change in y measures the up and down movement, how much it rises, and the change in x measures the side-to-side movement, the run. Problem 1. Let's find the slope of this graph. First, let's look for the change in y. From one point to the next, what's the vertical shift? How much does it rise? This dot moves up 1, 2, 3, 4. So the change in y is plus 4. So 4 is going to be the numerator in our ratio. Now let's find the change in x. The change in x is going to be the side-to-side shift. So this graph is running to the side plus 3. So the denominator of our ratio is going to be 3. So the slope of this graph is going to be 4 over 3. Problem 2. Let's find the slope of this graph. Notice that there aren't any clear points labeled on the line. We first need to find some nice points in order to find our rise and run. For example, should we use this spot as one of our points? This spot's probably not a good idea because notice that this dot doesn't lie at any clear intersections. We don't know exactly what the height of this spot is. Can we use this spot as one of the points on our graph? Notice that this point lies at a clear intersection, so we know exactly where this point is. This point's at 3, 5. So this would be a good spot to use. Do you see any points on the graph that lie on a clear intersection? Other points you can use can include 1, 2, -1, -1, and -3, -4. Now that we have some clear points on the graph, let's go ahead and figure out our rise. From one dot to the next, what's my change in y? What's the change in height? From this dot to the next, this is going up 3 spaces, so plus 3. So the numerator for my slope is going to be 3. Now what's my horizontal shift? What's my change in x? Side to side, I'm moving plus 2. So the denominator is going to be 2. So the slope of this graph is going to be 3 over 2. Problem 3. Let's find the slope of this line. What are some points on the line that lie on clear intersections? We have the point 0, 4. We have the point 1, -1. And we have the point 2, -6. Now let's go ahead and find our change in y. Notice here we're shifting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're shifting 5. But since we're moving down, it's going to be -5. So the top of my slope is going to be -5. Now let's go and find our change in x. Here we're moving to the side 1, so my change in x is going to be plus 1. So the denominator of my slope is going to be 1. So the slope of this graph is going to be -5 over 1. Problem 4. Let's find the slope of this graph. What are some clear points on the line that we can use to find our slope? There are a lot of different options to choose from, but 2 points that I see is we have the point 2, 0, and we have the point 6, 2. So let's go and use these 2 points. First, what's my change in y? What's the change in height from one dot to the next? The change in y is going to be 1, 2, plus 2. So the top of my slope is going to be 2. Now let's find the change in x. How much side to side do we move? 1, 2, 3, 4. So my change in x is plus 4. So the denominator of my slope is going to be 4. What if we use 2 different points to find our slope? Would our answer be different? Let's go and try 2 new points. Let's try the point -2, -2, and let's use the point 0, -1. What's the change in y? What's the change in height from this dot to this dot? Here the change in y is 1. So our numerator is 1. What's the change in x? Moving to the side, we move 1, 2. So our change in x is 2. So our ratio is going to be 1 over 2. Are these the same ratio? If I simplify this fraction If I divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, t divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So it turns out it doesn't matter what 2 points I choose on the graph. As long as it lands on 2 clear points, the slope is going to reduce to the same amount. In order to find slope from a graph, we need to figure out what the change in y is, which is the up and down change, which will be the top of our ratio. And then we need to figure out what the change in x is, which is the side-to-side change, and will be the bottom of our ratio.